Member of Parliament Dr. Ramanathan Archana until the 29th of April, following his arrest this morning. Illawarra police took the legislator into custody of allegations of criminal trespassing and criminal intimidation involving a firearm during a land dispute in Periyavilan. Police reports indicate the confrontation occurred on the 25th of April when Dr. Archana allegedly threatened a woman while clearing property currently subject to pending litigation. The Negombo Additional Magistrate granted permission to detain and interrogate a monk from Gampaha for 1 week following his arrest for allegedly planning the smuggling of narcotics valued at over 1.1 billion rupees. This suspect appeared before the Additional Magistrate today after 22 other monks faced arrest at the Katnaka airport with kush and hashish. The monk informed police that a Sri Lankan monk based in Thailand provided the stock for transport, marking his third involvement in such a smuggling operation. Investigators revealed the suspect received 80,000 rupees per trip for delivering the narcotics to residents in Athurugiriya, which police now monitor. While the 22 monks arrested by the Police Narcotics Bureau remain in custody for further questioning. Public Security Minister Anand Vijaypala confirmed that the law will apply to all individuals involved, regardless of their status or rank. Now, meanwhile, the Police Narcotics Bureau incinerated nearly 302 kilograms of previously seized drugs today at the Laktovatta factory in Manathvillua. This marks the third mass destruction of narcotics carried out within the current year. Sri Lanka's iconic tea industry is facing a storm. While conflict in the Middle East has severed vital global shipping routes, experts warn that the real threat to the world-renowned Ceylon tea comes from within. A crisis of both geopolitics and aging agriculture. For an island nation heavily dependent on agricultural exports, the numbers from earlier this year are alarming. By the end of March, Sri Lanka recorded a tea export deficit of nearly 2.8 million kilos compared to last year. With maritime shipping routes becoming volatile following the outbreak of war in late February, exporters found their cargo suddenly stranded. Niraj D. Mel, chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board, explains the immediate paralysis.
The way they were hammering all the countryside, including hammering Dubai and Bahrain and Kuwait and so on. So that put a lot of fear into the shipping line. That they were not taking cargo. They were requesting Sri Lankan tea exporters to hold back shipment, whatever that was already on sea, so being offloaded in ports in India and so on, because they didn't want to take the cargo and go into troubled water. So all in all, it is the drop is totally because of the impact from the war which broke out of the 20th of February. That is why we find that we were on a positive till end of February, and March alone severe drop, and that has resulted in a quarter drop of, for the first 3 months we are dropped out by something like 2.8 million kilos. We have done little over 6 million kilos, whereas last year we did 63 million kilos plus the first 3 months of 2025. So purely because of the March drop, which as you said was about 15-16%, has affected the export performance.
With direct ocean routes to the key Middle Eastern markets severely compromised, exporters are relying on historical overland loopholes to keep the tea flowing. Dimel highlights that these loopholes help keep tea prices at auctions unaffected.
The exports to the Middle Eastern countries will remain lower than what we have done in the month of March and April, even this year, because of this uncertainty. Of course, I understand that lots of the countries in the Middle East that are not affected by the war, or I'm told that even Iran, there are different routes being found, not on sea, through they normally call the unofficial channels, overland. It is getting into these countries. That's why the tea market at the auction, tea prices have not been affected in the last 3-4 weeks. Even this week the market was very good. Last week was good. Of course, I must say countries like Russia and all would not have bought so much at this point in time, because if they are going in for summer, are cashing in and buying more. Obviously, they want to safeguard themselves with adequate stocks.
While unofficial border channels offer a temporary lifeline, blaming the Middle East conflict masks a far deeper systematic decay within Sri Lanka's own tea estates. The island's share of global tea production has plummeted from nearly 20% a few decades ago to just 3.5% today. The reason, it turns out, is literally rooted in the ground.
Today, for the last 3 or 4 years, Sri Lanka has been producing less than 300 million kilos of tea. So we are a 3.5% shareholder of the global tea production. Compared to say 40 years ago, we would have had about 18-19% of the global cake in terms of production. So we have lost out big time. We crossed the 300 million kilos annual production in the year 2000, and we maintained it till about year 2015, and since then there has been a downhill. Our bushes are old, right? We are not doing appreciable amount of replanting, right? So what more can you expect from an old tea bush, which is some are over 50 years old, some are even over 80, 100 years old.
Dying bushes are only half the problem. The industry is also strangled by red tape. Dimel argues that mere survival now requires drastic modernization at home and new geopolitical alliances abroad.
Implementing ease of doing business. That has been the severe negative in this country. So our so-called, people are hammering left, right, and center about procurement process. Yes, they are all actually inhibiting Sri Lankan export growth. You can't be having this kind of tedious, archaic 1940s and 50s procurement processes to apply in the fast-paced, digitalized world that we are in today. So all this has to be relooked at. So when an attack like this happens, you can't overnight think of, let's do this and now increase our exports. That's not going to happen. You need to have dialogue. And I had said in that this government is perhaps in a better position to look at coming into long-term arrangements, government to government, with countries like China, with countries like India. These are all large tea-drinking countries. And China, today the Chinese youth are drinking a lot of black tea. So these involve long-term negotiations coming into government-to-government arrangements and get our exporters to line up and facilitate the export. Government must make channels easy for them to export, not have this rigorous kind of obstacles being put when it comes to exports or when it comes to import of things for export purposes. All that has to be relooked at. But this requires, you can't just a war that has broken out, you can't find a quick fixes to improve on some other end. So this is something that even the previous government should have done. We are very comfortable carrying on.
Dimel went on to say that with heavy rains approaching in May, crop yields are expected to rise. But without upgraded warehouse facilities and streamlined export laws, the tea risks going nowhere. For Ceylon tea to reclaim its crown, the industry must fundamentally modernize before time runs out.
Now for some news in brief.
The Samik-John Balavega has invited the United National Party to join its May Day rally scheduled for the 1st of May at the PD Sirisena Stadium in Maligavatta, calling for joint action to defend workers' and citizens' rights.
The business news on Gold FM.
The all-share price index of the Colombo Stock Exchange closed at 22,612.31 points after gaining 44.68 points today. The S&P SL 20 index also gained 9.94 to close at 6,214.56 points. Turnover total 3 billion rupees.
International news on Gold FM.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has touched down in St. Petersburg for talks with President Vladimir Putin as Tehran intensifies its diplomatic push to end the war launched by the United States and Israel. His visit follows steps in Pakistan and Oman, with Islamabad continuing to mediate between Washington and Tehran. However, in the meantime, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed that it is still too early to lift the sanctions on Iran.
We think the dropping of sanctions would be too early because there's a reason why the sanctions are imposed on Iran. And this reason is their behavior towards the own population. 17,000 young people have been killed alone this year, the beginning of this year, by the regime. It's the suppression of human rights and specifically women's rights in Iran and many other topics that triggered the sanctions. We first have to see a change, a fundamental change in Iran for the dropping of sanctions, and therefore we think it's too early to drop sanctions.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Producer T-Bone Burnett launched a new recording project featuring Ringo Starr to highlight the former Beatles' often overlooked vocal abilities. The collaboration explores a country and American style, drawing on the musical flavors Starr pioneered during his time with the Beatles.
Sports news on Gold FM.
Team Sri Lanka secured a silver medal in the women's kabaddi at the 6th Asian Beach Games Sanya 2026. The men's kabaddi team also delivered a strong performance, clinching the bronze medal at the same event.